Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CPT Nuggets, and welcome to this nugget from the Tools and Techniques section of the PMI ACP exam. This nugget is focused on effective communications in an agile delivery environment. This nugget is focused on communications. Communications is from the Tools and Techniques component of the exam. Remembering that Tools and Techniques covers 50% of the total exam questions, and communications is one of the 10 components of the Tools and Techniques aspect of your PMI ACP exam. Communications on an agile delivery project is no different per se than communications on any project. Effective communications must take place with our stakeholders. In this nugget, we'll review the processes that should be used to ensure we have effective communications with our stakeholders. Communications needs to take place with the key business component of our organization, i.e. the business owner and or the sponsor, and other key business users that are going to interface directly with our project. And effective communications needs to take place with the team. In this nugget, we're going to focus on communications as it relates to agile delivery. Recognizing that agile delivery is more focused on high quality, continuous communications. In our earlier introductory nuggets, we discussed at length how traditional project management principles would create a large monolithic documents, and then the next phase of the project we would go away and we would act on, we would deliver to, we would work against those monolithic documents, and working against those documents was often an impediment to effective communications. Good delivery practices in an agile world says we don't follow that disjointed, distributed communications process. We need high quality, continuous communications at all levels in our project, to the stakeholders, to the key business people, and to the team. And the first communication channel we need to be concerned about are the stakeholders. And although stakeholders is a generic term that includes all project interested parties, recognizing that I have additional communications discussion with the key business area and with the team, I'm going to focus our stakeholder communication here on senior management and other interested parties. So what communications do we need to have in place for senior management and other interested parties? Well, for stakeholder management, there really isn't a lot of difference per se in an agile delivery environment as any traditional delivery environment, because senior management, other interested parties are really interested in three key things on our project. The status, are we on time? The budget, are we on cost? And are there any specific problems and issues that the stakeholders, the senior management, the other interested parties need to be aware of so they can help fix? And these principles apply, as I said, for all aspects of project delivery, not just agile. But, and this is a very significant but, we communicate status and budget in particular in an agile fashion in a very different way. In a traditional project, we know this is going to be a 15-month project. We know it's going to cost $125,000. And we report that we are 6% complete on our 15 months, and we have consumed 6.4% of the total budget. And we're always reporting status against the end state because we have predefined what the end state is. In an agile project, we're going to report status and the budget in a very different fashion. In a true Agile project, we can set our focus of 15 months, and in an Agile fashion, we can time box and say the project will always complete in 15 months because Agile allows us to do prioritized delivery. And it allows us to do incremental releases. So therefore, if we embark on a 15-month Agile project, recognizing that we're doing prioritized delivery, by the time we're into the 14 months of 15 months, all of the high priority, important business functions have been delivered and have been implemented and have probably been in use in the business for a substantial period of time. So therefore, by the time we're in month 14, we have some low priority items. And any that we don't get to when we finally hit month 15, we say their priority is low enough. They're not that critical. We can still stop the project at 15 months and say it's a total success because of the nature of our prioritized delivery and our incremental release. And similarly on budget, we anticipated spending $125,000 on our project. We know that our burn rate is going to be at X thousands of dollars a month. And we're simply saying at month 2, we've burnt 2 months of our 15 months. And therefore, again, our status is always a gold star or a blue star. And our budget can always be a gold star or a blue star because we're working in the Agile delivery fashion. So recognizing that, what should we be producing for the stakeholders in terms of status and budget? And what we're going to be producing for the stakeholders in terms of status and budget is what's been delivered. At the end of 2 months, we have completed 6 iterations. We have completed 1 implementation, and we have delivered this and this and this and this and this business value. So we're beginning to show the incremental delivery. Status in an Agile project is more focused on results and progress as opposed to reporting against the traditional 15 months, $125,000 project. So yes, our stakeholders still want to understand status, but in an Agile project, we can make our status far more results oriented and therefore deliver far more value, far more interesting information to the stakeholders because we're focusing on what's been accomplished. And to a large extent, the budget is going to be reported the same. It's just a more predictable, flat line process, assuming that our only budget items are our human resources, our team costs. But again, there may be some extra third-party costs. We may have to buy hardware. We have to may buy extra licenses, etc., etc. So there may be some interesting extra facets in budget status reporting. But overall, we're providing the interests to the stakeholders, but we're providing them with much more meaningful information. As I say, it's results oriented. It's focused on our accomplishments in the project. Now, buried way in here with all my writing is the other component that stakeholders are very interested in are the problems and the issues. And in an Agile delivery project, we will report problems and issues in exactly the same fashion that we would in any traditional project. Dear bosses, dear executive management, dear C-suite, this project is supposed to deliver this incremental business value, and we're having problems, and we need your help to fix it. So from that aspect, exactly the same. Now I'll put again a slight Agile twist to that. In an agile project, there should be far fewer problems and issues because, again, we're working on the prioritized delivery and the incremental release. In this iteration, in this 2-week period, we're going to focus only on the things that are well defined. We're going to focus only on the things that deliver the most value to the business, and we're going to have far more ability to control them and to have far more predictability. So therefore, the number of problems and issues should be less. Agile isn't going to make problems and issues go away, but it should significantly lessen that, and therefore, as a delivery manager in an agile fashion, we should be worried less about reporting problems and issues simply because we should have less problems and issues. But the similarities to traditional project delivery absolutely changes when we move into the business owner and in just a few moments the team itself. Communications with the business area is totally different, is agile communications. So what do we mean by effective agile communications with the business owner, the sponsor, and other key business people in the project? We start with the definition of the project vision or the roadmap, and this comes from our business owner. So yes, there is some similarity with the product vision in traditional project delivery and the product vision in an agile approach. We need a vision in both instances, but in an agile approach, the vision is still more loosely defined. The product owner, the business owner, is going to say, in 15 months, I hope to be able to accomplish this and this and this and this and this and this from a business delivery viewpoint. And the project vision is put out there, and I'm going to say visible. Often a good product vision can be described as the traditional elevator pitch. What can we deliver? How can we communicate what it is this project is going to accomplish in the amount of time it takes for an elevator ride from the ground floor to a 20th floor in an office tower? So there's not a lot of detail in the product vision, but we want to put it out there. We want to post it in the project team space, and we want to post it in the business space so everybody is aware of what our goal is going to be for the project. And the rest of the communications is from the team back to the business owner. And in an agile world, we don't communicate with these large monolithic analysis documents and design documents and so on and so on and so on. We communicate back and forth with the business. Our key communication strategy is a user story. And a user story says, I, as a type of business person, as a warehouse clerk, need to do a business process so that I can achieve a goal. And these user stories are going to be very, very specific. The user stories are going to turn into those code snippets that we're going to deliver. A user story is going to say, the menuing system should allow me to select these 6 options. The customer maintenance system should allow me to verify a postal code or an address, and so on and so on. So the user stories are a key communications tool. It's from the business owner to the team, and then it's from the team back to the business owner that says, this is what you told me, and this is what I understand. Is this right? In Agile, we say the user story needs to encourage a conversation. The user story should say, I, as a warehouse clerk, need to be able to identify where a product is stored so that I can select the product for shipping to a customer. Very specific, and it needs to incite us to have a conversation to get further details, and then the further details are what we're going to create. Now, there's going to be hundreds of these user stories because it's going to take hundreds of these little snippets of business functionality to define everything that the project needs to deliver. So how do we track all of this? How do we ensure that the combination of all of these stories will eventually satisfy the product vision? We track them in this thing called a backlog. And a backlog is best described as a corkboard, and it could be a very large corkboard where the user stories are pinned. So a user story is I as a warehouse clerk need to ta-da-ta-da. It gets written up on an index card and we post it on the backlog. And then the combination of all of the user stories on the backlog identifies all of the work that the team needs to be working on and identifies when we've accomplished the product vision. The two main communications tools with the business owner, to the business owner, and from the business owner are the user stories and the backlogs. As an elaboration on that, we may use this term called a wireframe. And a wireframe is not a specific Agile terminology. You may already be familiar with the term wireframe from other traditional development projects, where a wireframe is quickly a mock-up or a model of what it is we're trying to accomplish. It's another way to express our understanding of the user story and saying, okay, if I understand this, let me quickly mock this up in PowerPoint or in Visio, or let me mock this up on a whiteboard and let me walk you through the scenario. Or we may use this terminology called personas, where a persona allows us to provide quick reference point to a specific group of people or a specific function in the business area. So it's a broad grouping to allow us to better communicate. It takes the personalities out and it assigns a persona to a specific business function. But again, these are typically used to clarify the understanding of the user stories and to help us manage through the backlog for the project. And with that, we have established the key communications fashions from, to, within, and around the business owner. Now, I talked about conversations. We want conversations to take place at all times with the business owner. So a key aspect of doing effective communications with our business owner in an Agile project is the availability. Of the business owner. In order for Agile development to work, the business owner must be successful, and generally stated, we would expect the business owner to be available to the project at least 50% of every day of the project. And when we say available, we mean in the team space. Available doesn't mean I'm up in my office in another floor, and if you call me, I'll be happy to take your phone call, or I'll respond to every email you send me within 15 minutes. Available means in the team space. So when a developer picks up a user story and says, I as a warehouse clerk need to da-da-da-da. Now let me clarify exactly what you mean. Let me do a quick wireframe. Let me mock this up in PowerPoint or on the whiteboard. Let me verify what the persona is that is working within this particular user story. And we're going to have these 5-minute conversations because everything should be very specific, allowing us to effectively communicate at a micro level in Agile delivery. And it's at the micro level that again is key to our success, not just in communications, but our key to success in all aspects of Agile delivery, because we're dealing with a very unique, very specific, very definable, very manageable snippet of the total project, and we take that through to completion, and then we do that many, 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 many times, and when we're done all of that, we have success because we have satisfied all of the business vision. Now, how do we confirm that we're doing it right? That's our last key aspect to effective communications with our business owner. We have iteration reviews. So the developer takes the story, writes the code, and then has a show and tell. So in addition to the conversations that we have to verify our expectations during the development phase, when we're done the development phase, we do an iteration review where we literally do show and tell. Hey, business owner, come on over to my desk for 15 minutes. I want to show you this user story in working code. I'm not talking a wireframe. I'm not talking a persona. I'm talking iterative review, iteration review, show and tell working code. This is the code that allows the warehouse clerk to find out where the product is. Does this satisfy everything you want? The business owner says, yep, that snippet, that little piece of my total vision is 100%. It's ready to go live. It's ready to be implemented. Effective communications with the business owner is based on having that business owner available to the project on an as needed, when needed basis. And our last piece of effective communications in an agile world is the effective team communications in, again, an agile fashion. And the first agile terminology that is typically bantered about related to communications is this thing called information radiators. And an information radiator is a visible display in the team space. Back when we were talking about the product vision, I said we need to make it visible. I suggest we print the product vision in very large font, probably on a post-it size piece of paper, and we put it, post-it size, a flip chart size piece of paper, and we post it in the project workspace, and we have another flip chart size piece of paper, and we post it in the business area. And we continue to post. We have visible display. We have, again, the large flip charts that says, here's the vision. We have other large flip charts that says, here is the burn down chart. What is the burn down chart? It's tracking the progress of the stories. When we started this iteration, we had 15 stories. As we're working through the iteration, we're watching the number of outstanding stories burn down. 2 weeks later, at the end of the iteration, we've burned our number of outstanding stories for this iteration down to 0, and we are visibly displaying it. Another variation on the burn down chart is the burn up chart, and I think that probably speaks for itself. In a burn up, we start at 0, and we show the progress as opposed to the remaining. Whichever communications method is going to be more appropriate for your team, by all means select it and use it. But visible, visible, visible. One of the key agile techniques around communications is, I'm going to say, old-fashioned. I.e., it's written and it's manual, as opposed to today's technology where it's all automated and digital. And in a true purist aspect to agile delivery, the technology-based communications tools, the wikis and the collaborative workspaces and all of those other things are deemed to be non-agile because they don't support the degree of visibility that we need to run effective communications. And I'm going to again stick on this term of the old-fashioned way. Now, does that mean we have to throw away our laptops and stop using our instant messengers and stop using our collaborative workspaces? The answer is no. But the key is, if we're going to use technology in an agile fashion, we need to find ways to make the technologies visible. So yes, you can write your user stories in a tool, in an electronic tool, in a spreadsheet, in a word processing tool, provided that you have ways to keep the visibility into all of those user stories visible throughout the communications. And yes, you can use electronic charting tools to run your burn up, your burn down charts, provided again you have a way to keep this visible. And the term of a project portal comes to mind. I'm a little bit biased towards the old-fashioned method, because with the old-fashioned method, when you have your workspace and you have all of this stuff posted all over the place, your team can't help but see it. And if your team wants to have a discussion around a burn-up chart or a burn-down chart or a specific story, they simply gather around that chart posted on the wall and they have their discussion. So again, this old-fashioned method, there is a beauty to it that you need to ensure you have effective communications processes in place to support that ad hoc communications when you're using technology. Focus on ways to make your technology visible, and you're still going to support the principles of effective team communications. The next key agile term people are well aware of is this concept of daily, and I'm going to stick the word stand-up meetings in there because, again, most people when they hear of agile, they think of the daily scrum, which comes from the scrum development process, where you have your 15-minute stand-up meetings where everybody answers 3 questions. What have I done since we last met? What do I plan to do before we meet again tomorrow? And are there any problems, issues, and warnings that I have? And we keep it short and sweet, 15 minutes, which is why we do the stand-up. But again, making sure the team attends these daily mandatory team meetings is going to be key to keeping everybody in the project informed, which in and of itself leads to effective team communications. We need to make specific attention to the team workspace. And people often refer to the public and the private space. A lot of effective communications takes place in public in an agile fashion. As I said, in the old-fashioned method, if you want to talk about a story, you go over to the backlog, you pull together the 2 or 3 or 4 team members that need to talk about that particular story, you take them over to the backlog corkboard, and you discuss the story. There is a lot of focus on public space, the visibility for effective communications in an agile fashion, but we also recognize there needs to be some private space available for the I just have to focus. I need some quiet time. So a team member has to have the ability to get away, to do the private quiet time where needed, but where possible, most of the time should be spent in the public fashion so that when your ear is half listening to a conversation and somebody is starting to talk about an issue around the burn down chart, or somebody is starting to talk about an issue about the story that you have some interest in, you can drop your pencil, drop your coding fingers off the keyboard, and walk over and join the conversation, which leads to the next key aspect for effective communications is this concept of osmotic communications. Being together, learning from each other, learning from the environment, the public gain of the groupthink is all very much part of effective communications in an Agile approach. We need to have constant interaction, the public space, within the team. And we need to have almost constant interaction with the business owner, recognizing that I said, as a minimum, we need the business owner available to the team at least 50% of the time in the public space, ready to join the ad hoc conversations, ready to discuss with any team member at any time the additional details they need, that extra 5-minute conversation that they need to understand exactly what the story is about to accomplish and how they need to produce the code, to write the code to allow the story to do exactly what it is that the business wants. Constant, informal communications. And then finally, to ensure that we're doing things effectively in terms of team communications, Agile principles say we should have ongoing regular retrospectives. Typically at the end of each iteration, whoops, my screen kind of took off on me there. Typically at the end of each iteration, we need to have a retrospective that says what worked well, what didn't work, what can we improve, how can we do this better. Let's take those lessons learned forward into the next iteration and be more successful. This concludes our first of 10 nuggets on the tools and techniques section of the ACP exam focused on successful Agile communications. This nugget was focused on how we communicate in an Agile fashion with the stakeholders, and with the stakeholders we demonstrate progress and results, which is a far more proactive approach to communications with the stakeholders, but we're still communicating the same key things to the project stakeholders, which is how well is the project doing, what's our status, how much is the project costing, which is our budget, and are there any problems and issues that we need to take to the attention of the senior management for resolution. The next aspect we talked about effective Agile communications is with the business owner and the sponsor, and in this particular section we recognize that communications with the business owner and sponsor is very different in an Agile fashion because it is very much on a detailed level, and we need the business owner available at least 50% of the time to the team for effective communications of exactly what the requirements are, how the user stories can be written, how the user stories are interpreted, and how the user stories on the total backlog are going to allow us to achieve the overall project vision, which is what the business owner puts together. And then finally, we talked about effective Agile team communications, which is really based on a very large aspect of public exposure, everybody in a common workspace. We have common space and we have private space with the focus on the common so that we can have the constant ongoing communications, the ability to access the information radiators, which are these large visible flipboard sized displays of project status, so that everybody can gravitate to these information radiators and everybody can learn from and draw from and participate in these information radiators so that we have the osmotic communications and we have the benefits of total groupthink within the team. This concludes our nugget on tools and communications focused on communications. I hope this module has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.